From the wide open prairies to pixel-sized worlds, this is Indie Quest in the Prairies with Cikor. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Indie Quest in the Prairies. Today we're here with Dillan, who's a sound designer and composer in the indie game development space. He's also a director with the Calgary Game Developers Association. So thanks for coming on down, making the trip.
Absolutely, it was fantastic to make it down here.
Yeah, and we got the first snowy day of the year, of course we called them down on, but true Albertan, it was like, nothing, I got an SUV, we're good.
Doesn't matter, we're used to it at this point, aren't we?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the CGDA and what you do there, what you guys have been working on.
Yeah, so we just hit our 10th anniversary. We had a party at our original monthly meetup space, but we are a community that's exclusively kind of on the path towards building up the video game industry, specifically in Calgary, but of course also looking at Greater Alberta.
Right.
We run a bunch of community meetups, we run game jams, we're directly involved with colleges that are also supporting video games like Bow Valley College. We are just everything, all hands on deck, making sure that Calgary is in the best seat possible to be the premier place for indie game development, and then of course also collaborating with people like Lethbridge, Red Deer, and Edmonton to see Alberta grow up as that space.
Right, yeah, it's such a tight community. I remember kind of dabbling in the early days of the CGDA when I was a student in Calgary. This was before it was a formal organization. It was a ragtag group of folks who were just what if kind of dreamers, you know. I went to a game jam and thought, this is really cool that we have this in Calgary, that there's even people making games, never mind events. And it's funny because that was about 10 years ago. And the growth since then, like you guys have exploded. You have all these events.
To give you a bit of a timeline, like when we first started, some of our earliest directors, they were just running it out of a library, out of small spaces, sometimes even just their houses. And it was, 4 or 5 of them. That was it. That was the entire CGDA group of people in around 2015. But they kept doing things. And they started planning things, they started planning monthly meetups, they started talking about what else can we do, where can we get funding from things like grants and such like that. And they just kept that momentum going. And I think that early passion that they showcased, that early just drive, that kind of inspired future generations. I showed up somewhere around either 2017, 2018, I can't remember at this time. But I remember arriving to my first game jam, very green, didn't know anything. And just the welcoming atmosphere that I experienced. All right, we're gonna get you on this team. You're gonna do this. You're gonna, can you do like pixel art? No, you're gonna learn.
You have 48 hours, go.
Yeah, 48 hours, and it was exciting. It was driven, and it wasn't intimidating. Like, you have all of these really big personalities, but each one is friendly and welcoming, and we're just doing everything we can to make sure that anybody from any sector of life, if you are into video games, you're on our side. Come in, welcome, come to the community, go to our events, come to our Discord, go to the meetups, whatever. We're just excited that you're into video games.
Yeah, well, and that's so cool how, because the community, my understanding anyway, is like CGDA came out of a library, and it was just people who were passionate about games, some of them not even developers themselves. And now we see people who are members of your community, like proposing their own events, running their own events, coming and and giving back to that. Like your board is effectively people too who either work in the industry or are passionate parts of the community that then came up to be part of the board.
Well, we have a lot of people who, they joined the CGDA obviously looking, I want to get into video games, how do I get a job in video games? And a lot of people just over time, they make enough connections or they meet the right people, and just everyone kind of naturally evolves. We find that the people that stick around are coming to our events often, are coming to our Indie Fridays. They are the people who somewhere along the line get that breakout into the scene. I can't give you metrics on that. I don't know why it happens, but it just goes to show you that how tight-knit our community is. Every single person builds their own network, and that network becomes a part of the network of the greater sphere of the CGDA, right? Everyone knows everyone, and then we know all those other people. And then, like you said, we have our community events that are happening. That's just drive, right? Our Modeling Monday, that's run by a volunteer. Our board game meetups, that's run by volunteers. Our narrative meetup, that's run by volunteers. And we have more that are popping up all the time. I just had a person come up to us at our AGM the other day. And she was like, I want to write or start a event where we talk about social media and we kind of get it. A couple of us were talking about it. I was like, great. Whatever you need, whatever I can give you, I'll do it. We maybe don't have capacity as directors to run it ourselves, but if you want to run it, go for it. We'll give you our blessing. We'll give you the CGDA logo. Whatever you need, we want to see more of that. Absolutely.
Wow. So is that kind of where you see the CGDA right now is like, you're running your own events, certainly, in your own initiatives, but is it like enabling the community to kind of grow? Is it industry advocacy? Like, where do you see your goals right now as an org?
I think the two things is that we do want to make sure that no matter what, the community is our first priority, because that is our bread and butter, right? Our game jams, our big events like the conferences, that's number one. Because that space allows people to network, it allows people to thrive, it allows people to develop their skills. And the next step, of course, is doing things like this to get more outreach, to let people know that, you know, not even just Calgary, but Alberta is a great place to make video games. You know, we have a really low cost of living, and you know, Calgary, Lethbridge, Edmonton, Red Deer, these are all places that have groups that you can come to. And if you're into video games, don't feel alone. You know, it's interesting. There's a video game that I'm on called Shade Protocol, and I was talking with one of the members there. And he said, you know, it's so great to communicate with people who are so passionate about video games, because he lives somewhere in kind of like rural USA. There's not a big game development scene there. So he's like, you know, just even talking to you guys about this and hearing about this and getting to share that kind of excitement, that's huge. And with places like Alberta, where we weren't traditionally known as video game scene, I think we're starting to get there now, it's that same thing. Those people get to really see, oh, there's other people like me, there's other people who want this. And we give them that space to come and talk.
Well, totally agree. Like I've been seeing that too, where a lot of these communities just came out of, these people were already there. They just didn't realize the other people were there. They needed to get into a room and chat and get excited and form groups and create events and things like that. And it's funny because I talk to a lot of folks about building the industry here, and a lot of it boils down to, we just enabled it. These people were here. We just tried to get them in a room together sometimes just to talk and get excited. And you know, and it's funny because it almost feels like an untapped resource that we already had. We're just starting to gain this momentum to coalesce into one kind of group, one mission, right? I think the studios, we were talking earlier about how there's a lot of talent here and people don't realize it. Do you know the number on how many studios? I think there's something like over 70 game studios.
Yeah, just somewhere a little over 70 game studios in Alberta they found in a study recently,
That is amazing. Like a lot of, I think if we're in the bubble, we're like, yeah, that kind of checks out if you add the solo devs and the micro studios and stuff. But for people outside of the loop who think, oh, you're trying to build this industry here and like pull it from BC, no, it's here.
It's here. No, and I think that's the number that always shocks people, right? We tell them, lots of people in here. And it's not just even studios. There's so many independent contractors who are working for big studios like PlayStation, like Nintendo, based in Alberta, but nobody knows it. And then we tell those facts to people and they're blown away. Even new people who come to our Indie Fridays, to our monthly meetups, they're, you know, talking to AAA devs, or they're talking to really veteran indie developers, and they're like, oh, I thought it was just students. And we're like, no, we're here. It might have been maybe 15, 20 years ago, I couldn't tell you, but we're not there anymore.
Well, and that's the thing too, is there's the studio count, right? And there's certainly a ton of students, but there's also professionals who are working in the industry or have been in the industry for decades that live in Alberta. Either because they're from here, or the cost of living compared to Vancouver, my goodness, like
we're way cheaper.
Exactly.
And again, you know, you kind of subset. Calgary and Edmonton obviously the most expensive, but you move to like a Lethbridge or a Red Deer, and the price just keeps dropping.
And we don't live in a world anymore where you need to live in the Bay, right? Like you can have a good internet connection, be in a somewhat close time zone, probably to the studio you're working with. But even then, I know some people who work with teams out of China and they're night owls, and that works just fine for them, and they live in like Canmore.
I'll give you an example of my own personal work. Like I'm full-time as a composer and sound designer. That's everything that I do. And there's only one studio I work with in Calgary, that's it. Out and abroad, I'm working with teams in the US, I'm working with teams in India, I'm working with teams occasionally in places like Greater Britain. Like, you don't have to be stuck in one place. If you have a good online presence and the drive to kind of push for that, you can absolutely make it anywhere.
Exactly. Well, and in a time when we're talking about Canada's economic future, not just our province, but Canada's economic future, there's a diversification opportunity here, right? It's kind of tech, it's kind of culture, it's kind of media, but it's grown into a massive industry now, like 500-600 billion, however big it is, right? So it feels like we're in a moment almost, or there's an opportunity here that maybe we can take advantage of and really spin this into something bigger.
I think the question on everyone's mind right now is, are we still pushing the boulder up, or is it starting to roll down? Yeah. And that will be revealed in about a year or 2 years here, I think, with everything that's going on in the video game sector. But once that question gets answered, I think it's, where do we put our chips? Where do we start kind of focusing our efforts? Is it going to just keep pushing up by itself, or is it going to start rolling and we just need to add more weight to it?
Right. Well, and in your opinion, what is ideal world? Let's say we're facing a blip in the industry as a whole, starts to trend positively again. What do we need to do in Alberta to bring us from 70 whatever indies and some folks who work remotely for other studios to like being the next BC ecosystem, the next Montreal ecosystem? How do we get there?
It's definitely just, I think, awareness of what options are available to you. We have so many like grants and programs that are available to you to get funding for projects that I think we have the talent here. It's collaborating more. It's I think one of the few issues that we do actually have in Alberta is that everyone kind of has their own idea. So everyone wants to do their own project. But the couple of successes that I've seen across Alberta come when multiple people who are really talented, have great skill sets, come together to build one thing. We have the resources here in Alberta, we really do. We have the safeguards, we have a low cost of living. If you collaborate with the right people, you get a good team, you go for the right grants, even talk to investors if you have that possibility, you can absolutely build something great here. That's definitely what I would say be our only thing that we need to do more of is collaboration with individual members and such like that.
Right, yeah. It's funny you mentioned the grant thing. I just had a conversation this morning with this student about like, how do I get into the industry? What are the most like in-demand kind of job roles and stuff? And jokingly I said grant writer, but like kind of, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you 4 or 5 of the studios that are really starting to do well in Calgary in the indie scene, they all were supported by grants. And not just CMF either, which is I think the most popular one right now. There's there's the Calgary Economic Development grants, there's CADA, there's SHRED, there's the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, there's a Canada Council for the Arts. Like, we have so much available here that they don't have in the US, for example. People forget Canada is one of the best places in the world to build arts projects because of our grant programs. Take advantage of them, 100%.
Yeah, well, and talking about the economic kind of shift we're going through in Canada right now, or the need for a shift, there's a cultural value there too, right? Like we talk about, we need more Canadian media in the CBC. We'll talk about shows and film and radio. They don't talk about games, and yet internationally, games have such a cultural impact right now. And not just the younger demographic. I think the average age of gamer is like 35 or something. It keeps going up every year. But games are a cultural medium. And we could be looking at Canadian-based IP. It may not necessarily be a game about a RCMP riding a moose or something like that, but these are Canadian-made stories by Canadian-made studios and IP that we hold here and can have an international impact. And I think it's interesting you mentioned grants, not just game related. A lot of people talk about wanting the tax credit or wanting a game-focused grant or funding pool, but we are part of the arts, we are part of technology, we are part of economic development and do have access to those streams. Do you find it's like, when I talk to developers about this, myself included, when I'm looking for funding, it's like, am I an artist? Can I apply for an arts grant? Like, do you have to tell developers that, hey, these pools are available to you too, or are they sort of aware?
I think it's started to shift more to more awareness. In the past, like you mentioned, like the first couple people who were the CGDA early directors, the first people who founded the organization. I will not say this 100%, but I'm pretty sure they were all developers, like coding developers, right? So I have to call myself a developer
software
too.
dev.
Software dev, yeah. Whereas now our organization is very diversified. I would still say probably 40 to 50%, and this is a rough number, is made up of software developers, people who understand the game engines. But you know, we have artists, we have musicians like myself, we have biz dev. We have lots more biz dev now than we had in the past.
That's so
Thank
great.
goodness, because they are very essential. We have people who are project managers, we have people who are marketers. Like the industry is evolving, and we're starting to get more of that talent staying in Alberta. And again, in the past, people said go to LA, go to Vancouver, but you can't afford to live in those cities. But you can make it here, and you can make it online. I think especially after COVID, people realized, oh, I can just live where I'm living. I can stay with my parents 3 more years and build up an industry or build up a job for myself. I got my start over COVID. I had a really strong social media presence, online presence, LinkedIn, all the fun stuff going into COVID. And so when everything went online, I had an advantage that a lot of people didn't have in that I had already been building that up for so long, because I wasn't getting any jobs in Calgary. But now I'm getting jobs internationally.
Right.
But you know, the biggest thing above all of it is that I think there just isn't a lot of awareness in the big decision makers. You know, I think the benefit that we've seen in the video game industry right now is that the people who did grow up with video games are starting to get into those positions of power, and they're aware. You and me both know this number, but I want to make sure the rest of the world does. Video games eclipse film, TV, and music together. Actually, I think we're just below that now.
Because we
were above it for a while.
It was every other entertainment industry at one point, because I did the research and I did a pitch competition on it.
Okay.
So like video games are massive. There was a projection that just came out recently that said somewhere around the tune of like 500 billion projected for 2026. Will we hit that number? Maybe not. But we're currently sitting at around 300. So we're a huge industry. We are massive. And if we want to see, like, if anybody wants to see diversified economies, video games should be one of the first things you're looking at, because there's an industry for it. There's a global industry for it. And the kids are starting to get a lot of money. The kids are starting to grow up and have real jobs, and they can spend all of that on gaming hardware, software, all the likes.
Yeah, one, I hear that argument often, the like, well, but then we'd be funding a niche industry. When you say, oh, the government, a niche industry, like.
No, and I think it really just comes down to, like when I've talked with people, big decision makers in the world of, 50 to 60 years old, the last thing they remember about video games was the crash in the 80s. They were like, oh yeah, the video game industry died in the 80s.
When we were filling pits full of ET Atari cartridges.
Yeah, like it was a big die there, because that was the first instance that they really got to have exposure to video games. But, we blew up in the early 2000s. We really blew up. We had a bunch of piddlings in the 90s, things were growing up, studios were becoming formed. By 2005, a bunch of those, bedroom studios had become the AAAs that grew our foundation.
Yeah.
The BioWares, the Ubisofts, all of those people started from developers that had a dream, right?
When it happened so fast, I think people almost couldn't see it. And it wasn't like Hollywood where it's so visible. Like if you played games, you saw it. And maybe if you were a parent, you're like, whoa, this thing's pretty big. But like the scale of it behind the scenes, like to your point, bigger than film, TV, music combined.
Sorry, we're just below now. Just below, but we were above, and we'll probably be above again real soon.
Give us a good year. And I think that mindset, like you're totally right. It happens so fast. A lot of people, the older folks in government or VCs and things like that just they don't understand the scale. Most people know that number in the industry, but outside of it, they don't. But I think there's also something too, because we're seeing more investment in film in Alberta, which I'm all for, and that's awesome, right?
No,
when
it's a great
creatives
thing,
win,
100%.
we all win. But I think they misunderstand how these industries can balloon out to other fields. So like film, for example, around here, a lot of people talk about how it brings jobs into these small towns.
It does.
Right? People go to the hotels, they go to the restaurants, they hire carpenters and tradesmen to build the sets and all of that. And it has this ballooning impact. Games can do the same thing. a lot of these software developers will go and work in, like my original background, I started in AR and VR, making like training and doing research. It wasn't necessarily games, same tools, 90% overlap in my skill set. But we see that as this like growing valuable somehow because it's related to big T tech. People understand how that can have a bigger economic impact. But the truth is that technology came from games. The skill set came from games. And I see a lot of people, yourself included probably, who in sound, they work on games, but they also work on films. They work on commercials.
And I do as well.
Exactly,
I mean,
right?
The thing, there's two really big points about this. One is that you absolutely should be looking at video games the same way as film, because realistically, film had the same pathway. It just happened way earlier. Film was around in the early 1920s, right? That's really kind of when it started growing. Then it grew bigger in the 50s and it had a big explosion. We're going through that same thing right now. But the people, again, who are big investors, like a lot of those people grew up already knowing film. They grew up into a world of film existing. They did not grow up into a world of video games existing. We are a new industry. We are very young in comparison, but we're going on the same pathway. And you're right, a lot of the technology that's being developed in games isn't just useful for video games and entertainment either. It's being used in the commercial sectors. Like there is a team in Edmonton who basically, they do VR games, stuff like that. And exact same thing, they were struggling with games early. And so they started looking at commercial sectors, and they built a whole bunch of training softwares for like oil rigs, for car manufacturers.
Scope, I think, Scope AR?
VR Cave, I think, is the name.
Cave.
Yeah. And then, of course, that did really well for them, and so they branched back out into games, and now they've exploded with that, with basically in-person places that you can go and do VR.
Right.
But the skill sets are very transferable. Like, if you develop video game professionals, they often can leak in other places. A lot of our biz dev people, they are involved or have been involved in other industries. Musicians, I am involved in film as well here and there. I've definitely focused on games because I enjoy it the most. But I've done film here and there, I've done commercial here and there. The developers, that is completely transferable. I think most major softwares are written on the back end in C++. Well, Unreal, one of the biggest engines of video games, is built in C++.
Exactly, yeah. Marketing, I know a lot of marketing people.
Marketing people, yeah.
If this industry grows, it's going to bring a lot of other sectors with it. Like, we're going to have the talent here now, right? So it's funny sometimes that we get called the niche industry, and I'm like, well, 2 points, we're really big. But also, it's not sequestered.
We're just not legacy yet. Film is a legacy industry. Most people who have been born today grew up knowing film from the start. It was not something that evolved in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Video games are. Video games are something that is an evolving industry, and we are only just now seeing people born into an era where video games are extremely prominent and commonplace everywhere.
Right.
So we need to recognize, I think, as a society, video games is on the same path as TV, as film, as music. And if we treat it as such, we can all do very well for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I want to pivot a little bit because you've touched on it a few times, sound design. Can you talk a little bit, I know there's probably NDAs and things, but talk a little bit about what you do on a technical level and how long you've been in the industry, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I've been working as a composer sound designer for 3 years full-time, around 7 years kind of on and off. I actually was even working through school. I went to the University of Calgary, got a degree in music composition from there.
So you're a local boy, okay.
I am local, yeah. I'm born and bred Calgarian, and I would love to stay here because it's a beautiful, beautiful country. I love the fields. I love the sea of grass that we have here. I studied online with Berklee College of Music as well, got a degree that was a little bit more focused on jazz studies, and I learned a lot of business stuff from them. In fact, I would credit Berklee College of Music with a lot of my know-how when it comes to how to market myself online. When it comes to the actual work, like it's really quite spread out. You know, sometimes I'm composing the music and the tracks for these pieces. Sometimes I'm doing the sound design. That could be anything. Every single piece of sound that you hear, the air conditioner in the back, the taps on the blocks, all of that needs to be done, right? In video games especially, because they're not live action, because we can't record those sounds direct, it's all animated, everything has to be done from scratch.
Right.
We have to record all the sounds, even if it's a really realistic game, like a God of War or something like, oh, realistic. even if it's a game that's trying to be more realistic, maybe
Right.
something that's closer to home, all of those sounds still have to be brought in and put in. A train in a video game, we cannot record it. We're animating it. So now we need to source that sound, put it in. And it's really exciting for me, obviously, but I won't bore you because it's a lot of technical talk.
Well, I was actually going to ask if you do the technical side of it, because I think sound is one of those things that people both underappreciate and don't understand the complexity of it as a discipline, right? Like art, they can look at it, they understand it's 3D model, off we go. Not that there's not depth to it, but with sound, it's funny because like you could take a game, have them play it with no sound for a few days. They get used to that environment, and then you turn it on and it's like a different experience. But people can't articulate it, right?
Well, here, I'll tell you a couple facts that I think are really fun for my industry specifically, for music and sound. So our brains actually process sound first. We do not process visuals. People think that visuals are more important. Because I'll tell you a really good example. You take a horror film, you take away all the sound. Is it still a horror film?
That's a good point.
If you put some comedy music behind it, it very quickly it becomes a comedic film. And if you take a regular film, it could be a comedy film, and you put horror sound behind it, that is now a horror film. It is the sound that is dictating our experience there. And the last point I'll make it is that you see in front of you, but you hear in 360 degrees. You get more information from sound than you do from visuals. Right. On the technical side of things as well, video games are very interesting because with a film, everything is placed and done, and then it plays once and it does not change. But in video games, I can choose to tap this, I can choose to tap it twice, I can choose to tap it 3 times.
You could do multiple.
I could do multiple things. I could do all of those things, and we have to account for that. In music, we need to make sure that the music is not going to just be one static loop the entire way through. Is it going to change dynamically if there's combat? Is there going to be a layer of energy added?
Right.
Are we going to bring it down if we go into a quiet section, to a stealth section? Are we going to change the sound based on pause menus? Like, there's so much uniqueness to the way that video games are interactive, and not just with sound, with everything, right? Again, a film, it plays front to back, and there's a very designed experience there. I think that sometimes writers are frustrated with games because it's like, well, I wrote this beautiful story, but they chose to skip this whole part. You can't do that in a film.
You can't do it, yeah.
But with the rest of the sectors, for sure, and actually with writers too, we have to be variable. We have to be ready. We have to test everything. What if the player decides to run into that wall for 4 hours straight? Is the game going to break? Half the time it does.
It could, yeah.
On the technical side of things as well, yes, I am involved a little bit. We work with programs called Wise and Fmod in audio. Those are basically plugins that are how we make the sound all dynamic. And then I usually hand that off to the developers to finally place it in-game.
Right, so you're doing the middleware step yourself. That's very cool.
I do, but in sound, it depends on the person. Because I'm indie, I do a lot of it all myself.
Right.
But when you get to the level of like AAAs, for those who don't know, AAAs are kind of like the biggest sectors or the biggest companies in our industry. It becomes a lot more specialized, like just a composer, just a sound designer, just a technical sound designer, which is the Wise Fmod.
Right, right. Well, and I'm glad you differentiated composition from sound design, because a lot of people think like, oh, you make the music. And maybe if you're a composer, though even then it's more complicated. If you've, oftentimes I find in modern games, certainly more AAA games, it's not one composition playing. There are stings when things happen, or when a player gets to a certain area, now you've got to transition in this layer, because again, it's not a film, right? You can't narrow down that timing. So even someone who's used to that more traditional controlled composition environment has to account for that. And then you have your sound designers and your Foley artists who
sound designers. Oh yeah, I should separate. There's sound design and there's Foley.
And then there's Foley.
There's dialogue editing. The sound gets really wide, but the amount of titles I'm gonna label with you is too long for this
like
conversation.
It's not one discipline. Like even and speaking again to like how big of an industry it is, but also how big of a thing like game development is. Art, there's probably 30 different types of artists. And then you could layer on top the different styles, and same with sound.
100%.
Depending on the scale of the studio, you might be the guy who wears all of the audio hats, or you might work with a team of specialists, and that's just one slice of the pie.
What I tell a lot of people who don't know much about the video game industry but are looking to either invest or be more involved in that industry, or they want to get a little bit of understanding of it, I say, look at God of War 4 specifically, look at the list of credits. And look at all of the different roles that are in sound, music, development, marketing, business, localization, dialogue, writing, voice actors, the musicians themselves, the whole orchestra. Like, it's just this massive, massive list. And sometimes it eclipses film lists. Like, people forget that, again, we are a big industry now. Oof. Some video games are going up to $300 or $400 million in budget. Some even more than that, maybe not a good thing when they do that.
Depending on whether this comes out before or after GTA 6 release.
Yeah, that'll be, well, we'll see if they even tell us how much that game cost.
Yeah.
But like, these are huge projects. They have to hire a ton of people and really talented people. And unlike films, the majority of that budget is not going to one big name actor. It's going to a vast array of technical and artistic people who are just creating this amazing, amazing product, right? And again, there's the 400 million, there's also all the way down to like just $1 million, there's the 50 million projects, there's the people who are making it out of their bedroom for $60, and then it sells millions of copies. We're such a strange industry in that sense.
Right, well, and I'm gonna poke a nerve here, I apologize in advance. How many times have you been brought onto a project, like in the last 10%, and they're like, okay, we got to do the audio, and we don't know what we're doing? Because I hear that a lot from audio people. They're like, you have to bring us in earlier. That's not how this works.
You know, funny enough, it hasn't happened as much as it did maybe 7 years ago.
Good, maybe we're changing.
Well, I think, again, it's a difference between film. When a film project contacts me, when a commercial contacts me, they're done. They're at Locked Picture. They're like, we need everything now in 2 weeks. And I'm like, ah! But video games, I think people have recognized, you know, we don't have to start at the end. We could, it would be bad. But composers, even the big ones, are being brought on, you know, as early as 25% through the project, or even sometimes being brought on, like if there's a Kickstarter, for example, they're being contacted before they've even started, saying, hey, we just want to have your name on this to get started. Would you be interested in the project?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. And so they're there from day one. And it's great because it means that you aren't just post-production. You are part of production the entire way through. It's a big difference between, well, we have a bunch of differences, but it's another difference between film, TV, and what we do. Right.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that because, like, to your point earlier, the sound is so important. And to give an example, the game that I'm working on, the indie game that my studio is working on, we were having an issue where, because the jumps are supposed to feel forceful and powerful. It's like an anime, you can jump off a wall. And we were adjusting the animation, we were adjusting the timing, we were adjusting velocity and speed, and it just did not feel good. We were like, I don't understand. I can make you as fast as a bullet and you still don't feel powerful. Added some audio, game changer. We would have spun our wheels for months trying to get that to feel good. Just didn't have sound, just didn't have the impact that brought.
And I do still run into that with some indie developers. They don't recognize it right away. In fact, I've given you lots of statistics about sound, but I'll give you one more. When streamers come to us and they ask us, you know, hey, we're looking to upgrade our level, like what, but I don't have the power. What should I be prioritizing? Sound. That sound needs to be crystal clear because your audience will actually drop off. If it's at 720p, if it's at 480p even, you can kind of get away with it as long as the sound is good. That needs to be number one.
Yeah. So lesson to everyone, please be kind to your sound designers and your composers. Bring them in early.
Pay them well.
Pay them well, yeah. So it's interesting with your education, you mentioned it was more like traditional composition. It sort of sounds like music theory, but they taught you business, which I think is amazing. You even said it really helped you. But how does that lead to video games?
Well, the thing was I was always into video games.
Right.
I was always interested in it. I always wanted to be in that world. But it was just the challenge of how to break into it, right? And yeah, so like at my first degree at the University of Calgary, that was exclusively like traditional classical music composition throughout. Right. And then it was the Berklee College of Music where they taught jazz theory and then business. I learned a lot of business stuff, and I think.
Such a mix.
But you know, the business is sort of like a side thing because it's there to basically make sure that you can be successful.
Right.
I think something that a lot of artists maybe don't consider is that, hey, if you're going to be an artist in this world, you need to know business. You need to know how to shake hands. You need to know how to go to a pub and shake hands with all the people who are going to get you the money.
Yeah, promote yourself even.
100%.
Yeah.
Like so many artists I know, they're only talking to other artists. It's like, that's not the person who's going to get you the job. It's the director or it's the lead developer or the designer or the producer. Those are the people who you really need to network with as an artist. And that's not just for video games. That's film, that's TV, that's even with the commercial art world.
Right.
The other side of that is that I think a lot of people also discount how important it is to be online and to be present online. Like, no one likes to say it. No one likes to say it, but you need to have social media.
Yeah.
It is 100% important. And
I hate LinkedIn too, but
I
we
hate
be on
LinkedIn
there,
too, but I have gotten probably 4 or 5 projects from just being present online on LinkedIn. And you don't have to be a social media influencer.
Yeah.
Find one social media alongside LinkedIn. You probably want LinkedIn as well, that you feel comfortable posting on, 2 or 3 times a week at most. If you can do more, do more.
Right.
But just having a presence, even if it isn't growing that much, even if it isn't doing the crazy scaling up to 10K, if you can do that, then do it. But being aware, being there. Every time you meet somebody at a conference, here's my Instagram, here's my LinkedIn. And then every time you talk about a new project, they're reminded that you are doing stuff and you're still active in this industry.
Top of mind.
100%. Yeah. You don't need to be a social media influencer, but you do need to be in people's awareness.
Right.
If you want to make it.
So was that kind of your toe in? It was somebody you met, somebody on social media. Like, how did you go from student, graduate, into your first gig?
It's a crazy story. So I was always into video games. Obviously, I always wanted to be in that world. I was also into music. I took lessons from when I was like 5 years old. And going into university, I actually didn't go for music for my first degree. My first degree, which I did not get, my first degree I was trying to get was actually psychology, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a real job.
There's a pivot.
I'm gonna be a psychologist. I'm gonna study this, and I think I came out of my first year like a 2.2 GPA. I was just terrible. I was not studying. It was all rogue memorization, which I was horrible at. It was a lot of memorizing terms, and I was just like, I hate this. And so I was a part of the Calgary Stampede show band, and I was actually section leader there even for 2 years. And so I was really involved in music. I was still really in that space. I had done a little bit of gigging as a keyboardist here or there in rock bands, but I didn't see the path forward to make money. So I did a little bit of research. I'd always loved video games. I always liked the idea of becoming a composer for that world, but was it viable? 100%. In fact, because it's business to business, it's one of the most reliable ways to make money in music.
Interesting.
But you have to love it.
Yeah.
You have to love video games. You have to play video games. You have to love the music of video games. The sound design side, I kind of picked up over time as well. A lot of composers, they kind of do sound design on the side as like, I have to because it's indie games. I like it as well. I think it's really interesting. I mean, again, just everything makes sound.
Yeah.
And you can make so many cool sounds with your mouth, with random crap. And
turn it into a laser beam sound.
Yeah, and then you put that into a program and you could do even more with it. So I fell in love with that. I fell in love with both of those sides, and I'd actually made a PowerPoint presentation for my parents. And I said, I want to do this. I will be able to make money doing it. Here's how. Here's my game plan. I pitched it because my parents are from a more kind of traditional business world. They don't understand the entertainment side of things.
Right.
So I had to say, okay, listen, you guys are helping me through university. I can make it if I commit to it. And I pitched it to my dad and my mother, and they were like, go for it. We'll support you in any way. You have a game plan, you have an action plan. Work on it. We'll support you for, as long as we can. But if it fails, are you able to pivot? I said, absolutely. I will pivot into another business if it fails, but I'm going to go forward with it. And so I went to school for that. My first year out of school was 2020. COVID hit.
Oh my God.
So my first year I graduated from the University of Calgary, 2020, COVID hit. But I had built up a presence all through that time. I had been doing game jams here and there. That summer, the summer that I graduated in 2020, I did 30 game jams in 2 months. I was doing 3 or 4 a weekend. And then, a couple that were like month-longs, a couple that were week-longs, and I built an entire portfolio. So coming out of 2020, I actually jumped right into another degree with Berkeley, as I mentioned, but I was doing work now throughout that, because a couple of people had seen me either through game jams or through the presence that I built up on Instagram and LinkedIn, and just projects started popping here or there. Small things. They didn't pay much. They didn't do much. But they were a credit.
Right.
And I did that, and I did a couple of small films, I did a couple of commercials here and there, wherever it could come. Alongside this, also networking with film composers, video game composers, doing mentorship programs with things like the Screen Composers Guild of Canada. Oh my goodness, it's hard to even go through all of the things I did because there were so many that failed.
Right.
But it was the couple that just kept moving forward, building up a website, the social media presence, doing those mentorships, which gave me mentors who to this day I am still in contact with, who I still look to for advice.
Right.
And building the network. Like when in-person events came back, I was the first person there.
Right.
The CGDA, the moment they started having events again, I was there, and the Indie Friday thing popped up. I said, I'll take this over if you guys want. Because they were talking about, oh, we don't know if we can keep running it. It's like, I'll do it. I'll run it. Became a director that year as well.
Right.
I was like, I would love to run the meetups and the Indie Fridays, and they were like, go for it.
When you're a good example of like why that stuff is important, right? Like what CGDA is doing is starting to create an environment for people to do what you did. Network, meet people, get inspired. Eventually, stuff will pop off.
I tell people, like, you need to first of all make sure that you are the best of everyone you know in your craft. But then the next step is network. The next step is go out to those in-person events. If you're a quiet person, I have the most horrible news to tell people. I was too. I am a hard introvert. I've done the test multiple times. Consistently, without fail, I get 80% into the introvert field.
Right.
People are like, how? How are you like that? You do public speaking. You spoke
It's a skill.
It's a skill that you can level up. Like in video games, I practiced in front of the mirror, talking to myself. I felt like a crazy person. But now I've done things like, speak at local events. I've done a lot of the kind of hosting for the CGDA events. I spoke at GDC. That's our biggest business-to-business conference pretty much in the world, I think.
Maybe Gamescom, but
Maybe
I'm not
Gamescom,
sure.
but just business-to-business, definitely GDC. And that was something that I practiced. I practiced to all hell.
Right.
And anyone can do it. If you're a quiet person, come out to the events, come talk to me, because I remember when I was there, and I will make sure you have a great time. I will make sure that you are feeling, included, because I think that's the crux of definitely a lot of our community stuff, is that we are open to anyone from any swath of life, diverse people, people who are underrepresented. It doesn't matter who you are. Come to our events, and I will make sure that you have a good time. And I will make sure that you are among a group of people who love video games just as much as you do.
That is such good advice. It's such a warm community. The people who do this love it. They totally love it with all of every fiber.
But we're not doing it for the money.
Exactly, we're not doing it for the money. Okay, so I have to do the thing that every game developer gets.
Yep.
Favorite game, but I want to put a spin on it. Favorite game because of the music or the sound design. Do you have something?
I'll give you one each.
Okay.
So favorite game right now, and it varies, it's changed over the years. I think at one point, if you had asked me when I was younger, it would have been like Pokemon Emerald. It's still up there, it's still like top 10, but number one for me definitely is Dark Souls.
The original Dark Souls.
Dark Souls, yeah, original Dark Souls. I don't say Demon Souls because it was a little unrefined.
Yeah.
But Dark Souls, it had just something to it that was just almost kind of imaginary in the beautifulness. The level design was amazing. The music was good. Sound design was great. It had an atmosphere to it that was just lonely in its own way. It didn't treat you like a child. It said, this is a punishing game. People may not think that anymore, but when it first came out, it was like considered the hardest game because it was just, there was no level slider. You couldn't make it easier. You just had to play it.
Get good.
You just I try to stop saying that, but yeah, you had to get good. You had to just play it and be involved in it, and learn the systems. And they kind of even went even further with that with another one of my favorite games, Cikor. This is a From Software thing, right? They said, okay, now you don't even have different equipment. You need to learn our mechanics. And I love that. I love that even today, you see a lot of games now that are kind of following that trend of saying, this is what the game is, play it or it's not for you. Yeah. And that's fine, because we don't need to have things that are for everybody. Every single person has their own tastes and preferences, and we should be adhering to those niches. Indie games already, we're a niche within a niche. We represent somewhere around maybe 5% of the total video game market, right? We're really small, but that doesn't mean that you can't sell millions of copies if you go after a specific group.
Exactly.
We have a developer in Calgary who makes exclusively automation games, things like Factorio, but obviously kind of within that world.
Right.
And they have a huge audience, because they're going after that demographic.
Right, right.
To answer your second part of your question, though, for sound, and music. I'll separate them because different games have different ones. The best music I've ever heard has to be hands down Final Fantasy VII Remake.
The remake, interesting, controversial. You heard it here first, folks.
Well, the remake uses a lot of the same tracks. It just gives them a beautiful, shiny live orchestra, really powerful synthesizers. Like, I love Final Fantasy VII, I really do.
I mean, I agree for what it's worth.
But that is an old game at this point. That is a dinky-looking game by this point. The story still holds up, though, right? It just needed a fresh coat of paint. And regardless of your feelings of the remake and the choices that they made there, I won't spoil it for anybody, the art, the sound, the music.
When One Wing Angel hits.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, it's beautiful, right? Yeah. And then for sound, I'm going to give it to another actually From Software game. Armored Core 6 had some crazy sound design. Like you have a million rockets flying around you. You're jumping with this giant mech. There's all the like world noises. You are piloting this massive thing, the size of this room or bigger. And they have to make all of that work and still sound good and precise and clear.
And you can still hear it all.
You can hear it all, and you know what's how. They're like, okay, there's something behind me. I'm moving here. Oh, my mech's sliding a little bit. Oh, I'm running out of energy here. Oh, this UI is popping off. Oh, there's another rocket. But it's all clear. Yeah. How do you make chaos like that work and still sound good? On top of also having music and dialogue and all these, like the sound designers. Kota Hoshino, I believe, is the name of the sound designer / composer for Armored Core 6. Wow. Him and his team, what a job. What a job they did on that.
Yeah, really speaks to the craft.
100%.
Yeah. Cool.
What about yourself?
Me?
Here, let's ask you. What got you into video games? And what were the games that really inspired you?
It's a tough question because I don't remember a time that I didn't want to be a game developer. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. So I wanted to be an astronaut. And not like every kid wants to be an astronaut. I literally, I remember when I was 10, 12, looking into the programs that I would have to take, the things I would have to learn, and how do I get into flight training? Because at the time, though, it's different now. You had to have perfect 30-30 vision. I do not. So I was excluded just off the top. I just learned in my mid-teens that wasn't a thing. But there was always a part of me that wanted to make games. The reason I think the wanting to be an astronaut thing is relevant is because I love adventure and having experiences that kind of bring you to the extremity of stress or emotion, fantastical things, both in real life. I very much think of some of my favorite moments in games on the same level as I did an internship in Japan. I spent 4 months, or not an internship, study abroad. I spent 4 months over there, and it was such a surreal experience. But those 4 months sit beside some of the most emotional moments I've experienced in games. I kind of feel them as if they're, I don't know, moments in my life, I guess. And I wanted to be an astronaut because I was like, what is more extreme, right? What could be a more intense experience? And so when I lost that opportunity, it felt like a natural transition in a weird way. But I didn't know what part of that I wanted to do or be. I like the stories, but specifically how they're told within a world. Characters are interesting to me, but I didn't want to model characters. I didn't want to voice. I don't want to rig a thing. And so I actually originally thought I wanted to be a writer. I did a lot of writing as a kid. And then I spoke with someone who is a narrative designer in games and realized, ooh, actually, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't, I imagined what most narrative people in games do, where I just write a story and the team just brings my vision to life, which is not the reality.
No, it's not the reality.
So when I heard the reality, I'm like, maybe not for me. Maybe I want to be a concept artist. I want to design the worlds. So I went to art school and I dropped out before I flunked out because it turns out, no, I'm not actually a very good traditional artist either. So then I thought, well, but there was something in there that kind of scratched an itch. I don't really like to illustrate, but there was something about the world creation that I did really like. So I took a degree at the University of Lethbridge in new media, which allowed me a bit more of a general, we did film, we did graphic design, we did audio and game development, and it allowed me to sort of have the smorgasbord and see what stuck. And over time, I realized I like to tell environments through the worlds that, or tell stories through the worlds that they take place in, through the environment. and particularly 3D modeling just stuck. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly because I was a BioWare kid, right? I grew up on a lot of those games. The stories, the worlds, the characters really stuck with me. If I had to pick a favorite game, it's Final Fantasy X. Beautiful world, story, the music, all of it just
Titus and his lovely laugh.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But yeah, I think it was that. But I like to tell stories, right? Like games really are just, for me, I think the medium that brings it all together. It tickles my brain in the way I love the complexity, the technicality, the artistry, the teamwork, the way you have to interact with the player, all of that. But I also love that there's so many things. I can't just go out, not to knock on film, but I can't just go out and film a scene. There's so much that has to come together just to bring like that one moment to life. And
there's something really beautiful
about it.
About
There's
that,
so much to chew on. There's so much complexity. So I don't know if that meandering story answered your question.
It's always the same story, I think. It doesn't matter where we came from or what we did before. I mean, so many people have transitioned. I was going to be a psychologist. You were going to be an astronaut. Everyone comes back to it, the people who stay in video games and kind of start working in this field, because it hit something that, you know, you can't describe. It feels very silly and hippie and whatever you want to say about but there is something special about that art form, and, you know, the collaborating with people that you would never talk to otherwise, people who know money, people who know music, people who know development. Like, we're all in a space together for the same reason. We love video games. It does something that we cannot describe, and that is, it's beautiful. It really
Absolutely.
is.
Okay, so I think I've gotten through a lot of the questions I wanted to get through, but I want to give you a moment if there's anything you wanted to come back to, if there's any topics you want to explore a little further.
I think I've said everything that I want to say. I just want to make sure people know, you know, Alberta's this bustling scene. We want to see more here. We're doing as much as we can. We are seeing huge growth, but any more support that we can get, anybody who wants to sponsor us, we promise you your money is going to go to big and great places, because Alberta is, I think, in my opinion, one of the best places in the world to make video games. We just need people to recognize that.
Absolutely. Well, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Thanks again for making the drive down.
Thanks again for having me.
To be on the show, and thank you.
I will.
It's all about
Nice.